Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. In this video I want to discuss who may be Satoshi. It's been 10 years since the legendary Hal Feeny tweeted out that he was running Bitcoin on the 10th of January 2009. And this morning on Twitter I asked you guys who you believe may be Satoshi. Now the most common train of thought is that it was a group of individuals, so let's explore a few of those candidates and their backgrounds. So the anonymous author of the Bitcoin white paper goes by Satoshi Nakamoto. Now this individual or group of people was very active in the early days on discussion boards and threads such as Bitcoin Talk, but they used anonymous, untraceable credentials when emailing other people or being online. So that's why it's so hard to pinpoint who it may be, and then we know they since faded into the background and no one has heard from Satoshi in a few years now. Back in 2014, Newsweek broke this story that they'd found the legendary Satoshi Nakamoto, and it turned out that that was this gentleman's actual birth name, and he since goes by the name of Dorian. Now, he's come out and said that it's very much not him. He doesn't quite have the profile of or the credentials to be able to create Bitcoin alone, even though he does have an interest in mathematics and so on. But I think we can safely say that it's not Dorian. So one of the most common candidates that's often thrown up is Hal Feeny, who is a legendary computer scientist, developed PGP. A lot of you will still be familiar with that, encryption for privacy for emailing and when exploring darker layers of the internet and so on. But Hal Feeny has since passed away. He did suffer from ALS and he has been cryogenically frozen, so he might be back someday. But Hal Feeny was just a legendary all-round guy, and he was in communication frequently with Satoshi in the early days, and he received that first Bitcoin transaction. And one little fun fact that I really love and that I found out when researching this was that there was an email in the early days where Hal was communicating with Satoshi and talking about only 20 million Bitcoins being in circulation in future. Now at that point there was no way to know that Satoshi himself would mine 1 million coins, keep them and not move them out of circulation to this day. So how did Hal know that there would only be 20 million ever in circulation? The next candidate here is Szabo, who's a computer scientist, legal scholar, and cryptographer. He was obsessed with digital contracts and creating a digital money and worked on something called BitGold since 1998. Now, there's a couple of interesting facts here around Szabo that a lot of people say that he wasn't efficient enough in C++ coding language to write this software alone. So maybe he was one of the group, but in a very early email thread, Satoshi said that his initials were at the front of one of his Bitcoin addresses, and we know that the chances of getting specific letters or numbers at the start of a Bitcoin address are extremely low. So when Satoshi had a Bitcoin address that started with NS, and he said that these were his initials, a lot of people point to that as saying Szabo. Now, the counter argument is that in Japan, often pronounce surnames first, Nakamoto, Satoshi. So, read into that as much as you want. But another fun fact there around Szabo. And guys, there's enough information out there to do even deeper dives in this video, but I just wanted to go over the candidates quickly in this presentation. The next one here is John Nash, who's said to be the most brilliant mathematician of the 20th century. He was the centerpiece for that movie, A Beautiful Mind, with Russell Crowe, that a lot of you will have seen, and he won the 1994 Nobel Prize for Economics, So he really did hate Keynesian economics. He was a bit of a libertarian, a bit of a recluse, as he did suffer from schizophrenia. The next candidate to talk about here is Dyer, another computer engineer who was obsessed with making these digital currencies. He was the creator of B-Money, another Bitcoin predecessor, and he was sufficient in C++ coding languages, so maybe he was involved. Now, the other thing to know here is that he was emailing Satoshi very early on, even before the first block was created back in August 2008, and he'd been a big digital currency advocate for many years as well. Next up is the NSA, and a lot of people speculate that Bitcoin was created in-house by government to control the next world reserve currency and so on. Now, some people point to those initials NSA as Nakamoto Satoshi again. Look, I'm not sure if I believe this one too much. I think there's just too much out there in the way of the background, the history, the decentralized nature for this to really be still controlled by one government agency. Now, building on top of that theory is a guy named Dave Climbin. So he was a former military man, policeman, and a computer forensics expert. Now, a lot of people have come out and said that he was very capable in cryptography and security and computer science to be able to create Bitcoin. But he did pass away in 2013. Now, officially it was by natural causes, but again, the conspiracy theorists out there say that he was involved and he helped the NSA build this, and then they got rid of him when they no longer need him, which is pretty bleak, but that's one of the theories that is out there today. He's also involved with that lawsuit that is involved Craig Wright. So as we see down here, in February 2018, the estate of Dave Climbin initiated a lawsuit against Craig Wright, saying that he has the rights to over $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, claiming that Craig Wright did defraud Climbin of those Bitcoins, intellectual property, and so on. So Craig Wright is one that isn't always the most savory character online and towards other people, but that doesn't mean he's not an extremely smart, brilliant individual, and he's got a lot of credentials. You can say what you want about him, but he's very capable and qualified. Look, I think he might have been involved early. I think he may have, even some of the emails or passwords from the early days and so on, but I don't necessarily think he is the sole creator and Satoshi. I'm really interested to know what you guys think about Craig, though, because this really divides the community. A lot of that Bitcoin Cash and the Satoshi's Vision crowd, are hell-bent on saying that Craig is Satoshi. So let me know in your thoughts below. But the one that I really want to finish on here is a guy that isn't spoken about a lot, and that's Shinichi Mochizuki. And he is an absolutely phenomenal mathematician, obsessed with numbers and geometry. And he has put out some papers that are, cutting edge stuff that really leaves other mathematicians, gobsmacked. And he does this every few years, and then he kind of goes back into the background. He doesn't publish these through journals and the usual means. He just sort of puts out these brilliant pieces of work and lets the public absorb it and do with it what they will. And that's very much in line with the way Satoshi used to operate as well. Now, the other thing to note is that Japan was really victim to a lot of these monetary experiments for years and years after they had that tech bubble very early on. So Japan's economy's been going sideways for 30 years now, and they've had zero interest rates. They've tried money printing and so on. So there's every incentive for someone in Japan to be really obsessed with this kind of decentralized money that can't be touched or printed by governments and banks. Earlier on than 2008, the GFC in the US and the West in developed countries. So a lot of people point to this gentleman. Again, I could do really deep dives on each of these individuals. So let me know if you'd be interested in a series talking about that. Check out some videos that are out there on these gentlemen if you haven't already, and let me know your thoughts in the comment below on who you believe is Satoshi, or was it a group of people. So smack that like button if you've liked this presentation, guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in. Cheers.